next one in our row this afternoon is Dr. Manfred Mittlböck. He is a senior scientist at our Department of Informatics at the University of Salzburg. And he is also a studio director for the Smart 4D Environment Studio at the Research Studios Austria Gesellschaft. Wow, I did it correctly. Manfred, please tell us about Enterprise GIS.
So thanks for giving me the opportunity to introduce the optional module Enterprise GIS. And I just want to jump into the topic itself. And for those who have no clue about what to think about Enterprise GIS, I just give the short definition. So it's everything about doing a GIS infrastructure, doing all about the processes, the tools, the organizational stuff, the technical stuff. So for those who just working since many years in spatial data infrastructures are pretty reminded of, okay, hey, that's nothing different than we just do for spatial data infrastructures. But in this case, we are focusing on the organizational level. So we are not having a scope like that was introduced a little bit prior about the European context and the spatial data infrastructure, like Inspire we have all over Europe by Markus Eisel. We focus on how to bring GIS into life on an organizational level and on a technical level. This gives us additional two definitions. On the one hand, as I already mentioned, it's all about this planning stuff, management stuff, and the improvement steps that are necessary to have an ongoing infrastructure, which is nothing like a project, but it's more something that's an infrastructure for the next years, that's even evolving, like the prevailing information technology is evolving over years and years and years. And so we have to adapt in this case. And on the other hand, we are still focusing on giving a technical viewpoint, how to really organize and manage technical enterprise GIS infrastructures. So having them in a way in our organization available so that we can nicely work with that. So if we just start over and think of, okay, hey, what is an organization about? And think of maybe you're the city mayor of Salzburg and thinking of, okay, hey, we need to do the organization of all our GIS data. So usually there's something like a GIS planning department or an IT department where we have these people sitting in there like colleagues of mine doing all the management of the GIS resources we have available. And therefore, we first of all have to think of, okay, what are my GIS users? What are even maybe external partners we have to include by using our GIS information, where we have to exchange the data accordingly? So how to bring these different groups together and also make sure that the data is sustainable over many years. So that's the idea of this organizational perspective. So we will cover this organizational perspective, and I just have to do a little bit of changing here, a text marker. So that's what we cover at the beginning at our first lesson. So where to use Enterprise GIS, how to set the terminology, so that we get a clear scope on what's about there with the Enterprise GIS. So as a second step, we go a step further, and then we just go a little bit back and look at the technical foundation, at the technical basis on where we are heading to use, and even nowadays already using in many cases GIS. We are not using GIS that often, that more in desktop environments. We are very often heading to use and open up our GIS information to a broader community, to a broader to all of the departments in the city government, for example. So really, we have to focus on the foundation of the cloud computing, where we have these cloud computing, the online cloud computing, like plenty of you already know, working with ArcGIS Online and so forth. But there is also this on-premise cloud computing. On-premise necessary because we have data that's sensitive, for example, that we do not want to share that to everyone, that we have to organize in our organization because there's a need to do that, for example, or we want to do cloud-based GIS in a way that we just have so intensive computing necessities so that it does not make sense, for example, at this stage, to put that online, as we are just running our calculations for many, many days. And we all know processing time in cloud environments, Amazon and Azure is pretty expensive in comparison to doing this processing in an on-premise cloud environment. So knowing about these basics, we just start over having a few exercises and recaps. Okay, how to do a nice work with ArcGIS Online to really jump into translating these concepts into some real world practice work. What you already have done a few times, but just to give a nice warming starter. As a next step in terms of where to think more about this organizational stuff, I'll just head over now to the later lessons. So when we start over, and then when we just start over to communicate that what we have available, the data we have available, the data we collected, the data we want to share out to others. And if we want to share our data to others, what we also have to do is we have to make sure that we document the resources accordingly. That's why we have a dedicated lesson on doing documentation. Some of you, I'm pretty sure, working in governmental agencies who know about the need for doing a very extended documentation on Inspire resources, where we have the needs through identified throughout Europe that we will need very good information to for the environmental data sets to make proper usage across countries available, even if we have different languages and so forth. So that's a way where I really just jump in, focus on this ISO way of documentation, so the ISO 19115 for those who know, so to really make sure that we have a proper documentation regardless of the computer system you're using. So regardless if you're using a commercial off-the-shelf ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Enterprise, if you use a CloudDB or others, or if you use a GeoNode from open source, regardless of these, with the geo networks and so forth, all the different metadata editors, we bring together these ideas either on the organizational level or even higher when sharing between organizations. And then we have two further dedicated lectures and exercises where on the one hand, we really focus on, okay, share out specific projects. So we have an infrastructure, but still within the infrastructure, in many cases, we have to tackle with projects. So having something like a very easy, what you see is what you get capability for defining nice geospatial websites. So how to bring out a nice communication interface to those using and leveraging the data. And finally, and we are now pretty happy to at least have a post-COVID time, at least for a few months, hopefully, and maybe even longer. We all know about this dashboarding. We all know about this integration of different data sets. And just prior, we heard about creating a dashboard with the ER. So how to share out this information on a user context level so that the users can really make use of the data and not just have an infrastructure there available. So these are these parts which are more on this organizational perspective of the enterprise module, then let's just jump further and go ahead. Okay, hey, when we do such enterprise GIS, we usually have to think of a technical solution which we can implement in an organization. And at this stage, what we will use, every student will get its own ArcGIS enterprise deployment. So to be able to really create a full enterprise site with all the functions in it, with all the processing functions, images processing functions, and so forth, to really create an own enterprise site like for a small organization. And what we especially focused on here is, even if we're using a commercial software solution with having proprietary interfaces, still we can focus on using open interfaces. So to really foster the interoperability, to really say, okay, even maybe we have some focus on the way that we use the ArcGIS enterprise, still we are capable of sharing out all the data in a compliant manner as web map service, as web feature service, and so forth. And also then check that back with using QGIS, for example, as a client. So heading forward now from this technical perspective, the other lectures we are going to have available with this course are then again focused on this technical perspective. I just switch now again to this different text marker, just giving a different color. So as the ArcGIS Online is more or less the transition point, as we are using an online service where all the information from all the, for example, UNIGIS students are coming together in one portal, we are then focusing, setting up and maintaining an own ArcGIS enterprise broker for each student. So each student will have an according enterprise server available, can set up an enterprise service and configure the enterprise service for his own purposes or her own purposes. So next part will be then, okay, just starting over in sharing web services, as you might already have done in other course modules, doing this very simple sharing of map services, image services, the first starting points. Additionally, we also will share rasters imagery as a later step, so that we really also have the possibility to do raster analysis, not only having the images like with the map services, but also coming on and doing raster analysis using the ArcGIS raster function for those who already have used that. Or later on top of that, even working with the publishing of image services in a way that we can very nicely also do some analysis on the client side. So other parts then will be about the creation of a mobile data application as an extension to what we did prior as a short editing, an online editing application. We really then focus on doing field data collection. It's getting more and more important to integrate field maps data in enterprise environments, so that all the people that are doing work outside just give back their state of work accordingly, so data can be integrated in a workflow for an organization. So when we have finished about all this data sharing for rasters and vectors and do the mobile data collections, we are heading forward to even share out geoprocessing services as we are changing to the web environments to the cloud environments, we will also move the geoprocessing part to the cloud. So that's the idea that we, as a subsequent lesson, just also look at the different geoprocessing options that we have available in a standardized way using OGC web processing services or in a proprietary manner. So then we then are heading forward when we have set up and worked with all these different technical components. Again, as already mentioned, then we will go further and really share out according information. Okay, so that's the different lessons in the lecture, which brings me already to the different learning outcomes. And there is also a quiz now. So there is a stock chart, and who can tell me at the end of my presentation which stock chart is that? It's I give you just some information. It's a German company. This is a stock chart for the last 3 months. Just give it to me, the answer. Maybe some of you have it. But finally, the learning outcomes will be really to explain the benefits of an enterprise GIS, to, on the next stage, really be able to use a tool like our GIS Enterprise to really create an own enterprise site, know about all the functionalities we have to have in the background as administrators to work which such sites, which you definitely usually do not have when, for example, if you just work on GIS online. So that you are able to describe all these key functionalities we have available and how to leverage clouds in private environments, on-premise environments, and where then even on the other hand, maybe switch better for ArcGIS Online. It's always dependent on the use cases you have in the background. Then you get some experiences with publishing services, web services, download services, coverage services. So you should have very good experience in just working with GIS products when starting over with this module, and doing fast services like timed map services and so forth. In many cases, we use ArcGIS Pro for the publishing components. For the client components, we also will use QGIS. And then we are heading forward to publish geospatial analysis tools, and then we do some mobile data collection, and all you students shall really be very keen on creating enterprise website experiences for just bringing the users together on a single website, and then finally create an according enterprise dashboard so that the users see, okay, hey, there's a bunch of data, how can we work with data? And that's the idea of these enterprise module. Okay, that's all already. Hopefully I stayed in time and just head back to.
Thank you, Manfred.